Well, again, good evening, everybody. Delighted to be with you for this beautiful Holy Thursday celebration. I'm well aware of the fact that as I preach on Holy Thursday, sitting to my extreme left up here in the sanctuary is Monsignor Jerry Mann, who's coming close to retirement after 30 years as pastor of this parish, after I believe 54 years of priesthood. Next to him, Father Bob Horahan, I just appointed as Monsignor Mann's successor, another great priest of our diocese. It occurred to me that one of the great themes of the Holy Thursday liturgy is the priesthood, the day when we celebrate the inauguration, the institution of the priesthood. So I want to spend a little time with you tonight reflecting on this great office within the church. And I want to do so by drawing on the two great themes of the liturgy tonight, namely the washing of the feet and the institution of the Eucharist. The two things the church wants us to really notice tonight. The washing of the feet, we just heard the description of Jesus doing it with his disciples, and the institution of the Eucharist. Now, I know you probably heard homilies along these lines 100 times, and I'll give you another one. Feet are kind of gross. No offense to podiatrists who might be here in the crowd tonight. You know, let's face it, they're not the most attractive part of the body. They don't get more attractive as you age, I can assure you. And you know, look, our feet bring us in contact with the earth, and we're always standing or running on them, so they get bruised and cut, and they get bunions, and they get infections, and all sorts of things. So feet, let's start there. But then think of feet at the time of Jesus. So people walking on unpaved, dusty roads all the time, and very inadequate footwear, like little simple sandals. People's feet became filthy dirty in Jesus' time. And so when you entered a home, the custom was, well, you have to wash your feet because they're kind of gross, right? But precisely because of that, you couldn't even ask a slave to do it. It was considered even too menial for a slave to wash feet. You dip them in a bowl or something, you kind of wash them yourself. Can you see now why St. Peter responds the way he does? Jesus, you know, we take it for granted because we see it every Holy Thursday, we hear about it, but imagine the disciples. Suddenly their master, their Lord, is putting a towel around his waist, bending down under their smelly, stinky feet and washing them? Peter, come on, you're not serious. That's what you hear, isn't it? You're not serious about this. You'll never wash my feet. That's how shocking a gesture it was for Jesus to do that. Okay, my first reflection on the priesthood. Now, don't get me wrong, priests have wonderful experiences with people at great moments of their lives, and a priest's life is often sharing joy and celebration. That's certainly true. But there is a large part of a priest's life that's like the washing of the feet. It's bending down to some of the kind of grimiest and grittiest and most difficult parts of life and bringing the grace of God. A lot of the priest's life is like washing feet. Think of a priest entering a hospital room. So here we are in the shadow of the greatest hospital in the world. Hospital rooms are wonderful, but they're not exactly pleasant places. People in hospital rooms, they're in pain, they're sick, they're often afraid. They're surrounded by families who are worried about them. But priests walk into those places all the time. I wonder how many times Monsignor Mann has walked into hospital rooms to bring the grace of God to those painful places. It's a place where feet are washed. That's my point. Think of a priest entering a funeral parlor. I remember when I was newly ordained, I was 26 years old, and I was in a parish outside Chicago, 3,000 families. There was a funeral parlor right next door to the church. I was in there 3 or 4 times a week. We had 3 or 4 funerals a week, typically. And at times I think, here I am 26 years old, what am I doing in all these funeral parlors? These difficult places, let's face it, where people are suffering. People are in a lot of pain. There's a lot of tears and anguish. But that's where priests go, because that's where feet need to be washed. Think of someone in the rectory parlor sharing a deep pain of the heart. Priests go there to wash feet. Think of the confessional. How many hours Monsignor Mann has spent in the confessional over these 54 years. Are they pleasant places? Not last time I checked. The confessional box is a difficult place. Coming to terms with your own guilt, your own sin, maybe trying to unburden your soul that's been under the weight of a sin for decades. Priests go there readily because it's a place where feet are to be washed. I have an image in my mind of Monsignor Mann. He's invited me to the rectory now many times for meals. He's a very good cook. I've been there for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on different occasions. And here's the typical setup. There's usually a lot of people there because he's gregarious, likes people around. But he'll greet you with a big smile, but he's wearing an apron typically. Because he's not just there schmoozing, he's preparing the meal. And then he'll be very friendly and greet everybody, but then he'll disappear. Oh, he's back in the kitchen finishing the meal. And then we all sit down, and out he comes wearing the apron and serving the meal to us. I remember one time I finished, I think it was a lunch, and I was one of the last people to leave, and I'm going out the back door of the rectory, and I look in the kitchen, all kinds of plates and pots and pans and crumpled napkins, and I said, Jerry, can I give you a hand with the cleanup? No, that's my job. That's an image I have of him, of standing in the apron. Jesus wrapped this towel around himself and washed his disciples' feet. Priests go into places that are often painful, and they bring the grace of God through their service. And that's what we're celebrating, I think, with him tonight as he comes to the end of his time here. All those years of service to us. Okay, so there's the washing of the feet. The second great image, and we're going to celebrate it tonight, is the institution of the Eucharist. Holy Thursday celebrates the moment when Jesus, for the first time, if you want to put it this way, celebrates the Mass. He offers his body and blood to his disciples. Vatican II, we know, famously called the Eucharist the source and summit of the Christian life. Everything flows from it, everything returns to it. It's the be-all and the end-all of the Christian life. That's how central it is. Priests, I think par excellence, are men of the Eucharist. When I was teaching in the seminary years ago, I would say it all the time to the seminarians. A priest is a man of the Eucharist. His life is conditioned by the Eucharist. It's especially for him, source and summit. I'll share a story with you that I shared at the Chrism Mass a few days ago. This was 1986, and I was just ordained to the priesthood. And your hands are oiled, they're chrismated, right, by the bishop. And the custom, people come up for a first blessing, they often will kiss your hands, right? Well, my memory of that day was my grandmother, who was 89 at the time. She's a little tiny lady. And she came up and kissed my newly ordained hands. Now, my grandmother knew full well all of my limitations. She wasn't honoring a little Bobby Barron, who she'd known all my life. But in her deep faith, she knew what had been communicated to me was this awful privilege of making present the body and blood of Jesus. That I became, as a priest, a vehicle of grace to serve the people. And that's what she was reverencing. I think of that a lot in the course of my priesthood, that gesture of my grandmother. Cardinal George of Chicago was sort of a mentor to me. And right after he became Archbishop of Chicago, the news people asked him, "What's your pastoral plan for Chicago?" You know what he said? "My plan is to say Mass every day for my people." Now, don't get me wrong, he had pastoral plans, he did. But he knew at the heart of all of it is he was saying Mass for his people. He was offering the gift of the Eucharist. That's priesthood. You know, Ronald Knox was a great Catholic apologist of the last century, Englishman. Very interesting figure, by the way. But Knox said this, it's always stayed in my mind. He said, almost all of Jesus' commands are honored at best in the breach. You know, love your enemies, love your neighbor, bless those who curse you, don't judge. Right? I mean, think of all the commands of Jesus that aren't followed very faithfully by us Christians. But, Knox said, weirdly, there is one command of Jesus that we do follow, despite our sins. And that's the command, do this in memory of me. It's true, isn't it, that up and down the centuries, the Eucharist, the Mass, the priesthood, somehow we know by a deep spiritual instinct the church won't survive without it. So despite all of our faults and limitations, we do follow that command of Jesus. Do this in memory of me. And think of this, everybody. If you look in the Gospel of Luke, we didn't hear Luke tonight, but in Luke's account of the Last Supper, Jesus says to them, with great desire, I've desired to share this meal with you. And that's the way the Greek goes. And it's with desire, I've desired. Pope Francis just wrote a letter called Desiderio Desideravi. That's the Latin version of that. With desire, I've desired. It means like, with all my heart, I wanted to share this with you. Think of the Eucharist, everybody. Yes, it's our longing for the Lord. Yes, indeed. That's why you're all here tonight. But in an even more powerful way, it's the Lord's longing for us with desire. He still says it tonight in Rochester, Minnesota. With desire, I've desired to share this meal with you. The priesthood, everybody, in a way is the place where those two desires meet. Can you see the priest standing at the altar is representing Christ, offering his love to the people, and he's also the mediator of the people's love for Christ. It's the meeting place of these two desires. Well, think of Monsignor Mann, 54 years. I was calculating, if you said one Mass a day, probably more than that, given weddings, funerals, right? But let's say for sake of argument, one Mass a day for 54 years. That is 19,710 Masses. That's a lot of Masses. With desire, I've desired to share this meal with you. He's stood at altars in great places like this, and probably little tiny chapels, and maybe around coffee tables and all kinds of different settings. But mediating Christ's desire for us, our desire for Christ. Beautiful. The washing of the feet, the offering of the Eucharist, that's the priesthood. So maybe everybody, I'll close with this. As we celebrate the priesthood tonight in a special way, could every one of you think of a priest who's done you some great service in the course of your life, who has, in a significant way, washed your feet, maybe mediated God's grace to you at a very troubled time? Or think of a priest who simply by his presence at the altar has brought Christ to you, body, blood, soul, and divinity. So maybe all of us could hold a priest that we especially reverence in mind. And on this beautiful Holy Thursday night, thank God for him.